You're watching Daybreak, and thank you for staying with us. The hashtag is Daybreak on X. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Let's now take a look at our main theme of the day: time, gender, and equity. In between is, of course, the question of the security of young Kenyans. They often fell victims of extrajudicial killings and other problems, including unemployment, and often sidelined by the political class and policymakers. But here on Daybreak, every Friday, we give them the voice to air their grievances and also propose solutions to the problems bedeviling the country in terms of its administration. I come to you first again, Kaberia. There's the question of now time management, and properly this is majorly a focus on as an entrepreneur, the characteristic of socio-economic growth of the country.
Yes.
I mean, how key is it for you, young Kenyans, to focus on the question of maximizing on the available timing and channel that to the productivity of the country economically?
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Ayub. And I see it as an entrepreneur. I've been in the business for the past 4 years, running my own company. And I tell you that there are so many challenges which comes by, first of all, being young and also being an entrepreneur. And one of the factors which you've mentioned is about looking at the issue of time. And time, and especially when you are able to harness opportunity based on the, the available opportunities at given times. And we have seasons and things which vary. But also, there's some time when no matter having the opportunity ready and all that, there is not that enabling environment for you to be able to harness the opportunity and to be able now to be meaningful in the economy. Look at things like the high living cost, the high taxation, and such things. Even the cost of running business becomes so much and so high, such that even if you are much willing, you are not able to be able to, you are not able to put things in order. So as young people in this nation, one of the things we really need to look at is build our internal capacity by various means, and also to be able to champion for the advocacy and change in the policies which will be able to enable us to be able to create jobs and also to be able to run businesses. Looking quickly backward, in the President Uhuru regime, we used to have this legislation called the ACPO, the Access to Government Procurement Opportunities, which was able to bring in women, youth and persons with a disability as a special group for the consideration of the 30% procurement opportunity. That being has been there. But when you look at the implementation and the adherence, I can say maybe I can give it to around 70%. And this is the time that the president, because he's focusing, and I said the hustler, this is the time to make sure that every parastatal, every state department, every ministry is able to adhere by even being able to channel and give opportunity to the young people to be able to start and run their business, by even accessing those government tenders and opportunities for the young people.
Yes, Angel, how key is, considering there was a time use survey, the very significance of, making use of time and channeling the energy towards a positive contribution to the country. For example, job creation. That was one of the clarion calls of President Obama to the young people in Kenya when he was here in 2015, and rather shift the attention from the focus on white-collar jobs, which has a limited scope of absorption when it comes to that market, and focus on productivity but by making use of the time that is available.
First of all, I'd like to say that as a woman, I feel that I have been born in one of the best times of this country. I am a woman born 25 years after the Beijing Conference of 1995. I am a woman born after Kenya has allowed itself to have multi-party democracy. I am a woman born at a time when there is more freedom of expression, better than there was before. I'm a woman born at a time when there is free education. And these are things that I appreciate as a woman in my time. I'm a woman born at a time where there is technological infrastructure, Kenya ranking 3rd highest. Of course, these are very major political decisions that have been made over the years, and that has to be contributed and attributed to that. What I see today is that if our leadership does not see itself to a gear that allows the private sector to boom, the private sector to explode, is something that this government really needs to consider. When we see businesses being wrecked into behind lorries here in CBD, when we see higher taxation. I mean, an economist will tell you that these are very simple textbook strategies that you need to implement. I mean, lower taxes, provide a conducive environment for businesses to thrive so that there can be more businesses. We cannot all get into government. We cannot all be politicians, but we need the private sector to boom. This issue in Kenya, where in government is where you make the most money, in government is where you become the richest, is not supposed to be the case. The private sector is where we should all be looking up to. The private sector is where we should all be saying that we want to work there and make more money and, amass the kind of wealth that we want or we desire. But this aspect of government being the one that is the best employer, that's where you make the most money, is supposed to be a question of the past. In developed countries, when you move from the private sector to government, you take almost an 80% pay cut. Here in government, Ayub, if you go into government, you become a billionaire overnight, and it's how we've made the environment to become. So when we are looking at our country, we need to look at it from all lenses. When Ruto was campaigning and he talked about his manifesto, he said the first thing he gets into office is to ensure that there is access to education. We will scrap out CBC. Of course, that has not happened. When you compare Ruto and his promises, when he talks about running the country the way Kibaki ran it, when Kibaki got into office, the first thing he did was to ensure there was free primary education. And 25 years from then, we are seeing so many, the fruits of free primary education. We are seeing more girls going to school than ever before. But now, when you look at the front page of the newspapers and you're seeing like education now has gone to the private sector, that is something that we need to wake up to as a country, because one thing that we pride ourselves as a nation is our service force. Globally and even here in Kenya, one thing that we can contribute and one thing we can really celebrate is how much we contribute to the service workforce. So and that is brought up, that really comes alive through education. Our education system has really been able to push us to that level. But now when we see education becoming a luxury, that is something that we should not condone as a generation of this time. All right.
Honorable Omia, coming to you, because you have been running a non-governmental organization that focused on the access to education of girls from northeastern Kenya before you were nominated by the ODM party. And also the paper this morning, the Daily Nation, has the headline, because we are talking about time, equity and gender, which is key, because education is an equalizer that allows us to access opportunities. End of free secondary education, for example, in national schools, parents who are paying 53,554 will by January next year pay 73,182 under the proposal. And this is leading to growing impatience from parents who might be unable, one. Two, on the question of the new championing for gender equity through access to education, now as a member of parliament, how key is then maximizing of that time in order to have the general outcome of positivity?
I mean, it's quite unfortunate because the happenings and how things are running in this country, two things are very crucial in any sustainable environment. One is quality education, number two is healthcare. Neither of these things are functioning so far. We've seen the insurance bill come to the floor of the House, and now we're seeing all this restructuring in education. And when you want to destabilize a generation particularly, those are the two things you touch on. If about 20 years ago, during the free primary education program, we've seen all these brilliant minds, all these young people who've come up and have benefited from this program. What this government should have done is pick up from where that has been left. What were the gaps? We've experienced free primary education. Can we now focus on free tertiary education? That should be the conversation. But the steps we are taking is just, taking us back. So are we going to look at a generation that cannot question government? Are we going to witness a situation where in 10, 15 years, we are not producing the crops of leaders, the crops of quality young people that we need in this country? And it's not even a subject of gender and equity anymore. It's now almost coming to a basic need. If that particular household, because the entire country has two different factions. We have the rural sort of education setup, and we have the urban education setups. Within urban centers, still having pockets of poverty in the informal sectors and all that. If this programs are removed, if these benefits that were supporting these families are removed, what are we looking at? Look at what has been happening. We've seen the CBC come. It's a whole mess. JSS is all over the place. We don't know whether these schools should remain where they are. We don't know whether they should build extra schools. Then you'll hear a conversation of, oh, we need extra buildings. Now more budgets will be put in place. Where is the priority in all this conversation? Mind you, we've not even fixed other components of education. We've not even fixed nomadic education. We've not fixed special needs education. We saw the president in Kisa yesterday talking about numerous programs for the special needs group. Good discussions. But how is this translating on paper? So for me, it's a subject of us going back on the 100% transition. The previous government talked of that, and it went big on it when Honorable Amina Mohamed was the Cabinet Secretary for Education. We were looking at how can we lower the entry grades for teachers to support more enrollment in the teaching fraternity. The discussion should be, if TSC is not able to sustain the teachers, if the insecurity is very big as they claim, because that's also another propaganda. I saw a conversation of arming teachers with guns.
In Baringo.
How do you give a teacher who earns 30,000 a gun? They'll rent it out to the terrorists. So are we creating solutions? Are we creating more problems? The discussion is not even about all. We are missing the priority completely.
Okay.
We have to go to the drawing board. We have to relook into these two areas. If we miss this step now, we've lost an entire generation.
Okay. Rotich, your account as, of course, the president of the Moot Court, Mount Kenya University. What's your account of all this? Because we need time to grow economically, because time informs any other aspect of life, be it at the household level or at leadership level, at the workspace level. And then there's the question of gender, which we still we have not addressed despite a constitutional provision. And then the equity, which ought to be the outcome or the output, which still we haven't attained. How do we balance all these three key components?
Thank you, Ayub. I dare say that time has to be contextualized. Time does not necessarily exist in a vacuum. And in African setup, we interpret time using events. Now, when we try to contextualize time in the Kenyan space, we tend to appreciate that the problem for Kenya and any other African state, but specifically for Kenya, is the problem of governance, the problem of leadership, where we have a context where people do not have the requisite resources and sources there to that they can get resources and assistance to further themselves economically, then that means they are not in an excellent position to plan on their time. Now, when they are not in a position to balance with their time, that is to say, you just wake up, you do not know how you are going to run your day, and the government is not focusing on the same. The government does not have the political goodwill to look into creating a conducive environment to ensure that its citizenry can develop itself, then it becomes very challenging. When you delve into the element of equity and gender and try to tune it with time, then you appreciate the law. You appreciate the provisions of the Constitution and Article 45, where it looks into the place of the family setup. That is to say, balancing between the contribution and appreciating the contribution that each and every gender does. And Section 2 of the Matrimonial Property Act looks into defining what matrimonial, what contribution entails. And it appreciates the time that even the female gender puts into in developing a family and whatnot. So for any state to develop itself, including Kenya, economically to be precise, it has to take into consideration how each and every gender, each and every age, each and every stakeholder in the country is utilizing time. If we see lack of advancement in education, then the disparity in time, especially when gender is taken into consideration, it becomes heightened. The gap becomes heightened. So it cripples the economic growth of any state.
Okay. And
Kenya is not an exception.
Okay. Kamau Wambiu, talk to me then from a youth caucus perspective in Kiambu County. How key is it to gather around time to inform, one, gender equality, and then two, the fixation that we ought to be having in terms of the economic growth that we desire as a country, you young people, of course, being part of the conversation?
I'll talk about opportunities. We lack opportunities in this country. This country where we are fast growing, we lack the opportunities to participate in the marketplace. Now, with gender equality coming into place, I feel the government has put more on the ladies. The ladies have been given more priority on growth and development. Thus, the young men and women, we lack the option, the priorities to participate in the market.
Okay. Jane, can you quit to the question of now from the governance perspective, you being the chair of the Ethical Leadership Network, I mean, the significance that ought to be an outcome that we all desire as a community. But the conversation for a very long time has been you young Kenyans who feel ostracized, sidelined by policymakers, to the extent now you in most times have the opportunity, but making use of it has been problematic. I mean, you have time on your edge. How do you make use of it?
Let me say about time. When I look at time, I think time can be a friend and it can be an enemy. It depends what you do with it. For example, if you use time to develop yourself and to build your capacity, then it is your friend, because you are becoming better and better with time. But when I look at the Kenyan situation, and having ran for office and gone to the villages and looked and interacted with the young people, it is so tragic to have young people who are jobless and they are doing nothing and they are losing hope, or they have lost hope, and they are engaging in drugs and all that. And what a loss, because that is the energetic resource of the nation that should be active, building the economy and building a better tomorrow for the country. So I feel we should really invest in our young people. And as Angel spoke about education, and I'm looking at education also in terms of technical skills, business skills. I went to university, I learned, studied political science and whatever I studied, but I come out, I'm jobless, I don't have an idea per se. I feel, looking back, if we had maybe seminars during my time in campus, as part of the programs, being trained on business skills, how to open a business, how to run a business, alongside my course, it would have been more useful. When I look at those young people in the villages that I'm talking about, they could do something. They are willing to do something. Call them for Jengo. They will come running, and they will do the job. So it means they just lack the opportunities. So if we could have like technical schools, every corner of the country, let us train these young people, let us give them opportunities, and opportunities are there. When I look at myself and my friends here, almost everything we have put on is imported. Why should we import the shoes? We have cows, we have the hide and skin, we can make the shoes here. If we just decide just one thing, shoes, to make in Kenya, then we will create probably hundreds of thousands of jobs. If we decide even the shirts, even the trousers, even the suits, we can make them here because we have the materials. And if we don't have them, we have farmers who can grow cotton, who can grow silk, who can grow everything. So it goes back to building our economy, focusing on us. What resources do we have as a country? And the biggest resource is people. especially the young people, because of the energy and creativity. How do we work with them so that we convert the potential into productivity? I think if we do that, then we are able to create opportunities for the young people. They are able to grow, to thrive.
Okay.
I know we produce a lot of graduates. We are not able to absorb all of them. But if we really focus on not them just going through the process, the university process, but acquiring skills that are useful in the marketplace, so that Kenya can pride itself. We have the best graduates in Africa, and maybe the best in the world, and we can export the labor to other countries.
Of course we do. We are a big exporter of human resources. I'll come to Kamau. Yes, you have a point?
Yeah.
Yes, to the question, yes. I'll come to you. Yes.
Maybe to add on whatever Kariuki is saying, in this country we lack opportunities because it's all trickling down to governance, to politics as per se. And I'd like to call on the young people to have a wake-up call on being vibrant and being, you desire the knowledge and to research on what is happening in the government, on what is happening on daily-to-day basis, because opportunities are there. But the government is also bringing a hindrance, to access in terms of taxes. We are young people. We are each and every university, maybe this month of October, November, August, we have produced over 100,000 graduates each and every year. That is what happened in mid-May. That is what happened in January. Each and every year. Where are all these people going? You get? But now, when these people want to start something of themselves, we have taxes, we have all these levy, we have licenses, we have the county. Everyone is on your neck. You get? Everyone wants, when you're going to the employment sector, everyone wants you to have experience. Everyone wants you to be articulate. But you're not giving all these chances.
Conditions.
Yes?
Conditions.
Yes, all these conditions being produced by the government. I think we should have a government that is lenient on these young people, that should produce opportunities for these young people. I get, just the other day is very sad when we saw Moses Kuria starting a baby on this, when he was starting to build the industries, those sectors. But now I've not seen it since almost 3 weeks now. There's nothing that has been launched. That was hope. That when each and every county has an industry, an industrial plant, that will produce like 500,000 jobs. That is hope. Maybe 300. That is the notion that was brought. Maybe if it could have worked, you see, it's hope. But now it is not yet there. You get, even in the politics, there is envy, but now that was hope. That this minister now cannot continue forward with this baby that he hoped to create jobs.
You're talking about the county aggregation centers.
Yes.
The last assignment in Garissa County.
Angel has said, which I think you missed, and in my previous interview I mentioned it, as long as government remains to be the most lucrative space to work in, there'll be no room for growth, there'll be no room for young people to come up, and the governance and the policies and whichever form of effort we put in will not come out strongly. Because look at the situation. County governments, there was a time when national resources were up there and weren't coming down to the grassroots. So we used to see individual millionaires. County governments were created, money is going down to the county, the grassroots, which is the intended group of people to benefit. But everybody is rushing to be a county employee. Why? It's because it's free money flowing from government. So the issue here is not the government being broke. The issue here is government overspending with zero to little accountability. There's no oversight going on. There's no accountability going on. And you are sanitized as per your proximity to power. The closer you are to power, then you're safe. So you're able to loot as much as you can. The solution here is one thing: for corruption to stop. And I have very radical thoughts on this. MPs should have no role in any public funds. I don't think I'll make friends with this statement, but I'm okay with that. Stop that. Number two, when it comes to counties, let government only finance 60 to 70% or maybe 50. The others should be coming from the county government itself. I come
On-source
from
revenue.
Garissa. Yes, on-source revenue. I come from Garissa County. There's a big platform for agriculture. Nobody would believe that because we are known to be a dry area, dry region, not productive. But these are 80% of Kenya's land lying idle. We can produce the best lemons. Currently, Garissa County produces the best lemons. Lemons are one of the leading products that are needed in the pharmaceutical companies. If we invite a company to set camp there, if we invite an industry to come and open a tides and skin tannery sort of setup in our county, that's on-source revenue. Employment will be found. Government is able to create its own revenues. Another situation, and I'll give you an example. I'll not mention the county. 20,000 students have been enrolled at a very small college in a county somewhere. 20,000 young people are in a new county. That means additional economy to that particular county. The revenue from Garissa County is 100 to, I think, 120 million shillings. That's peanuts. This is money that can be found just within having comrades in that particular county. We have Garissa University. I'll give an example of my county. We have Garissa University. We have the NEP technical colleges. We have the TVETs that are available. If the county governors focused on enrolling more young people into these counties, each comrade, for example, will spend roughly 500,000 shillings. Okay. That's around, I think, 10 million circulating in the economy. At the end of the month, it translates to 300 million shillings, for example. If we focused on one component, say we want to enroll more students as a county, we're able to get this amount of revenue. I don't have any background in economy. Okay. My background is in IT, but I'm just looking at the reality of
the basics.
The basics. Number two, the county governor then decides to focus on having one industry. If this government comes to us as Azimio, we'll give them our manifesto. One county, one product. It was there. Okay. You can tell them this is what we are planning to do. You don't have a strategy, have it. We don't even care about having shares in the government. It's fine. But can we support Kenyans in this particular sector? But as long as money is coming from Treasury every year, governors are on TV crying about not having disbursement, half of the budgets are going into recurrent costs, salaries. Why are we paying more people with less productive feedback? So as long as government is the most lucrative place to work in, there'll be no support for the economy.
Yes, Angela, I'll come to you. Yes, please, Angela.
Yes, Ayub, I'd like just to demystify something my colleague had said earlier, that we are still investing in young women now more than ever. But I still think there are so many hurdles that women are facing across the country. And when you look at things to do with teenage pregnancies, I mean, these are things that are really affecting our girls. And even Mheshimiwa here, Umi, will tell you that even they are struggling to allocate resources for periods, for pads, for girls across the country. Something so basic. Kenya, 60 years after independence, we are still grappling with the issue of pads. When we look at domestic violence, it is being meted against women. These are things that we should not really be experiencing, and say that Kenya is doing more for its women than men. Men are still the biggest shareholders. Men are still the largest owners of capital. If anything, then these men should come together and support their boys if they feel that the boys are being left out. But even when we are talking about the 2/3 gender rule, I mean, what is that? What are we saying? What are we saying to the women of this country? When we are standing on platforms campaigning and telling the Kenyans how we are going to go from having 2 women to a third of cabinet being women, and we are not seeing that being actualized. What does it mean? We have very educated women, we have very empowered women, we have leave half of the country's population out of the decision-making table. And that is what we are seeing in Parliament. And if Parliament cannot really realize these very simple thing, then which facet of society will be able to realize this? We're having more single mothers now more than before. When I look at myself, Ayub, I have to think of myself as I want to pursue a career. I also want a family. And then I look at time, and we are talking about time. And for women, time is not, we don't have the luxury of time as well. If I want to have a child today, that means whether I am a career woman or not, I have to sacrifice 15 to 18 years of my life to ensure that my children have a proper upbringing. Yeah. Where am I going to get all this time? Who is going to pay me for this time that I spend on my children? But naturally and biologically, we are expected to be satisfied about that. So when we talk about women not being less empowered, this is something that needs to be addressed over and over again, politically, socially, and economically, if Kenya is going to go to any levels of development in this world.
Thank you. Yes, Kabere.
Okay, thank you so much. I think when you look at this thing of the gender and the time bringing it together, there is so much which is so much mythical and also cultural, looking back at the African setup and the way, you know, our cultures are so much set. And even looking at the business perspective, and I'm talking this as a business consultant, and I support women, I support youth, and I support all kinds of people to be able to start and grow their businesses. And you'll be able to see that there is a lot of, you know, retrogressive thoughts about even women in business. And I would like maybe, for example, if you're a man, one of the things you need, irrespective of maybe who you are, is that thing we call networking. And networking involves a lot of, you know, meetings, forums, engagement, and such. And sometimes there's a lot of limitation when it comes to women and networking, because some of the networking spaces are very informal. You know, it's not like a formal setup whereby, you know, this is an office, you are going to discuss business. And it is so much, you know, misinterpreted, especially when the women are trying to network in business. So one of the things, the problem we have is the mindset thing, and it's a very retrogressive mindset whereby we are not taking women as equal players. You know, there are things we can never legislate. We can never legislate things like morality, things like mindset. It's just like we just have to advocate and champion that. You know, we can never downplay the role of women. We need to give them opportunity. And also, again, if you look at the capacity of the women and also looking at the youth, as much as there are challenges, also we all have a role to play. We cannot not always keep blaming maybe about the systems, the government, the policy. It takes down to the personal initiative of being aggressive, you know, being committed. Like, you know, when Umi was giving the statistic and the data about her county, you know, she has done her homework. You know, she has done, there's a commitment, there's something which she has been able to do for her to be where she is. And this is now the message that we also want to pass to the youth and to the other women that, you know, being a woman is not a disability per se, but you also have a role to play so that you are able to get in your space. These spaces are not given for free. Some of them you knock the doors, and sometimes when these doors are not opened, you know, sometimes you push, and sometimes it's not even pushing the door. It may even require sometimes even breaking the door, because this is not a fair society, a fair nation whereby as much as there's a law which says that there's that percent tender for you, you cannot just sit down and wait for you, you know, to come. You know, you need to apply, you need to be pre-qualified, you need to do all that, what it takes. So I think that's my 5 cents about that.
Okay, because I'm trying to tie up with the question of time and, of course, girl and women empowerment. Because from 3, we now have 7, for example, women governors who have largely made it in what's deemed as a patriarchal political system in Kenya. The case of Fatma Achani, Kawira Mwangaza, Wavinya Ndeti, Susan Kihika, Gladys Wanga, and we also Cecily Mbarire Embu, and one more that is Nakuru County's Susan Kihika, Fatma Achani I've mentioned. I mean, it takes a lot, is it, coming to you, Rotich, because even for the case of women, she must have been, she must have survived in a largely a political environment where informally, as Kaberia pointed out, it is very hard for you to cope because of the essence of the mindset and also the interaction between, you see, people in those informal engagements. I mean, how can we then allow the society to thrive?
Thank you, Ayub. I mean, human beings are tied to systems. We turn into systems in pursuit of achieving order. That is to say, we fear destabilizing the systems while hoping that we do not descend into chaos. And the problem therefore becomes, when we are encountered with challenges like these ones, we are very slow to mitigate them in pursuit of maintaining the status quo. And it is very true that when we look into time and raising a family, the skills are weighed against the women. That is to say, when people get married, you know, when they're growing up, the girls and the boys, it's equal, to say the least. But when we ascend into marriage, then we realize that women spend most of their time in unpaid work. They spend most of their time in domestic care. That's to say, around 5 hours in a day in unpaid work. And for men, that tends to reduce when they get married, because the society appreciates the fact that a man has to look for paid work in pursuit of sustaining his family. Then the inequity begins there. So that now means the women cannot have adequate time to focus on other income generating activities and personal growth endeavors. And the same can be handled in a situation where we have an environment where higher education has been championed for both, because when higher education, it has been established that when women pursue higher education, then the tendency of them allocating more time in personal growth and other income generating activities, including politics, tends to grow. And then when we look into the element of infrastructure, when you go to Baringo, where I come from, you appreciate the fact that women waste a lot of time looking for firewood, fetching water from streams which are very far from their homes. But when we focus on infrastructure, where water can be found at home, where gases are very cheap, the cylinders are cheap, they can utilize them. So that means time allocated for domestic work will be very limited. Then women will have the chance to allocate time to other things which are progressive, and thus advancing the economy of the country. And economics also play a role. When a country has advanced economically, when you look at the North and the South, when you compare the African state and some Asian and South African, South American countries, you would realize that developing countries have a problem when it comes to this because of disparity, and it cannot grow that much because of the element of disparity when it comes to time. Women cannot cannot contribute to the growth of an economy, and over-dependency becomes a problem because the males, men. Yes, becomes a huge problem, because now you cannot sustain an household, an economy, when only one gender is expected to advance, you know, and generate and advocate for growth. Then it becomes a
but are we men? Because all the problems you have mentioned, Rotich, are tied to the quality of governance that we have. Yeah. For example, why would, I mean, I don't mean in isolation, because Baringo produced the second president of the Republic of Kenya, and when resources were concentrated largely at the center, there was no devolution at the time then. I mean, if you look at its status, it's appalling because of its progress so far. But while all this is tied to the quality of governance, then are men then taking up the responsibility of taking care of women? Because from where I sit personally, and from my culture and religious perspective, it's the responsibility of men to provide for women. It doesn't matter high income. I mean, that's a set role. Can we progress? I mean, Kariuki, I come to you on this, because if we talk about time, gender, and equity, and we have to progress in wholesale, then are men in the contemporary Kenya, the Gen Zs, I mean, the born 90s, for our case here, are we ready to take up that responsibility of taking care of women so that we lessen their time on focus on other issues so that they prosper and we have this equal length of growth together?
Thank you for pointing out to the men on this, because I feel it is some moral issue also, and I'm looking at it as men have a responsibility in the society, and we see even the way they have been created, as he is saying, we have more time to engage in political matters, governance matters, business matters, as compared to women. We have that advantage. And also women have an advantage of being homemakers. For example, they have the privilege of bringing forth children and nurturing them. And that is a very noble responsibility. And I think where we need to draw the line is the men to really come out strong to play their role of supporting their families and supporting their wives. And the women also being proud of their responsibility of, for example, bringing up the children and educating them, inculcating morals, bringing up a generation. But where I feel there is a problem is when men, maybe they have that opportunity to go out, they make money and all that, and then they neglect their family. There is a problem there. But if men, they drive out there and they are able to support their wives, and these wives, as much as they bring up children, they are also able to pursue their goals, and we support them as men. There is a woman in the Bible that is called the Proverbs 31 woman. That woman is a balanced woman. She brings up her family, takes care of her children, and even the husband. And at the same time, she is a businesswoman who is making money and is able to support her family even by herself, and even to supplement the income of the man. So I think there is need for that from the family level, the unity between a man and a woman, and working together and supporting each other, and eventually we have a better society.
Okay, I'll come to you, just come out.
So maybe to add on whatever Kariuki is saying, it's a question of morals. A man with religion, your religion, my religion, I believe, any religion, and even our culture, a man is built, is created to be a responsible creature, to provide. The head, provision. The head carries the eyes, the five senses, carries the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, and the brain. You get na akili ni nywele, and that is where the head is. So a man is bound to provide, among other things. So when the question to say to Angel, I'm not done playing women, but I feel on top of the responsibility inculcated on men, on top of men, women, they ought to respect that. Most of the women, once we empower them, once we empower them, they come up and on akona pesa, she has the money, she has the power, she has the capability. That is why we are raising single mothers. She is now saying she's at the same level with the man. That is now where the question of moral comes in. She doesn't care who are you biz. Ayub can make 100,000, I can make 150. You get? But when she doesn't understand, 150 is there. But when she comes to the house, she is the wife. She is the woman. You get? And if she should submit to that man, provide together, talk together, raise children together. It is not the responsibility of women to raise children. And this also goes to the men also. You just don't give your wife children and you live. Where kazi yako, you provide and you don't take care of them. You don't know what is happening. That is why we are also raising weak men, because we have absent fathers. You get? That is why we are raising weak children, weak ladies, because we have absent fathers, absent mothers. Okay. But on the case of women, it's a case of morals. Let us have women respect men. If you're making 150,000 a month as a woman and your husband is making 20,000, that is it. But in the house, the man is the lion. So respect.
But you agree with me, respect is two-way?
Yes.
I mean, it has to be on the same level,
It is two-way, but a woman should
and the understanding that marriage is an institution that needs,
Now,
let me come to you, Umi, and this is very
why are we emphasizing on submission? It shouldn't be a debate. You're two adults, you've decided to get married. Work together, period.
Okay.
But if one decides, okay, I'm a man, I have an ego, or I'm a woman, I earn more than you, that's bullshit. It's simple. You're two human beings. You've decided to cohabit, live together, raise kids. You both have incomes, work.
Okay. I'll come to you. The question is still...
So this debate of submission, I think it's unnecessary.
Okay, we will have this debate some other time. Because it will be heated, I know, I'm sure. The question of then, we have talked about the aspect of now, the opportunities, what lies in between, I mean, making use of the timings and to achieve some of the constitutional provisions, like, as we have mentioned, the gender question, because that is a dictate. It isn't something that we need to hover around. It must be attained. And that's why there was an order by the former CJ, David Kenane Maraga, to dissolve Parliament. And is this insecurity then emboldening other parties to tap on the idle minds? For example, you have mentioned the question of alcohol abuse, drug abuse in some instances. In the case of Umi, the region that you come from largely, there's the insecurity question and severely the blanket condemnation of abductions that have come about, extrajudicial killings. I mean, how can that be staved off? What's the diagnosis to that problem in your view as a member of parliament from Mayo Seat?
I mean, I think it's quite unfortunate. I remember during the campaigns, this particular government campaigned on the backbone of protecting hustlers. But it has gone against every word it made in their manifesto, in their campaigns, in their agendas. The hustlers were to be shareholders. We don't see them. We are seeing hustlers being thrown at the back of vehicles and destroying their small businesses. The same government campaigned to end extrajudicial killings just before the elections and during elections. We were seeing cases of the Rivayala bodies, Tana River bodies floating in the rivers, and and most of the people being retrieved are young people. I sit in the House as a member of Parliament representing youth. So when you see me coming out strongly to condemn the government, it's because it's my responsibility. I feel the pinch. I lost my uncle to extrajudicial killings in 2019. He just walked out of his house. He was shot down, and until today we are still dragging the case in court. We've witnessed young men and young women being abducted. Why? They've been released, obviously. Should we say thank you to government for releasing them? Why were they arrested in the first place? Why were they abducted? One gentleman was just going about his business of boda boda, abducted from his house at 4 p.m., thrown inside a vehicle. 1 month he was gone. He's traumatized now, and we're actually taking him through therapy. Why is that happening? So if we continue intimidating young people, and I keep reiterating this, we've done so much work, so much money has been spent to build the relationship between the community and the police. It took me a long time to get comfortable with the police because I leave Garissa, I'm stopped 10 times before I get to Nairobi. And each time I have to produce my identity card. The community is traumatized because police has harassed these people over and over again. We've seen national counterterrorism that was formed to work with the communities on this issue. We've come across the documents of the national action plans for CVE that was done in the period of 2018, implemented across the 47 counties. Why are we undoing all the good work that we've done? The government must respect community. Government must respect young people. Young people are jobless. Government is not giving them jobs. And if we are not able to give them jobs, let's give them startup capital. Let's invite more investors to come in because, like I said, I come from a region that has so much agricultural potential. But we are focusing on insecurity. Up until today, when media talks about northern countries, counties, they show the dry side, acacia trees. We have so much beyond that. So can we focus on doing all this work jointly? The media has to put an effort in that. The government must put an effort in terms of putting money where their mouth is, and then supporting young people without intimidating them, because EGK is not a discussion we should have in this current generation.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Ayub. I think I agree with that more, and I dissociate strongly from the positions that my fellow panelists have asserted.
You have announced your deassociation.
Yeah, I dissociate with their position that placing economics in tandem with morality. You know, morality is social. Anything that's social is normal. Anything that's normal is sin. But Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso in the 1960s, early 1960s, tells us that some ideas to be achieved need some amount, a little bit amount of madness. It needs insanity. It needs us changing the status quo. And he achieved a lot in the former Upper Volta, which is currently Burkina Faso, by incorporating women. Actually, he championed for gender equality in his country. And in 4 years, Burkina Faso could be in a position to feed himself and itself. And after his death, the country tumbled into chaos. And we can see how Rwanda is doing currently. Actually, in the Rwandan government, I was there 2 months ago for a week. And the Rwandan parliament is lucky to be among the few, if not only, African states where it has achieved the two-third gender rule. And more women, women are more, when it's compared to men in the Rwandan parliament. And Rwanda is doing just fine. We cannot dissociate ourselves from the issue of dependency. We cannot say now women should submit, That's good, but now we are running away from the real issue, which is the element of economics. We cannot bring up sound citizens, kids who we can provide for when the dependency is lying on one side. And we cannot develop as a society. The GDP of Kenya is measured per capita income. The per capita income does not incorporate the man and his family. It incorporates each and every person per head in the country. So when we foresee a situation where it's only the men who have the economic know-how, then it is quite unfortunate that the GDP of Kenya will still be down. So we need to empower each and everyone. We need to ensure that we balance it without destabilizing the family unit, but economic growth and gender equality are wings of the same bird, and they can never be separated.
Yes, Angel.
Yes, Ayub. Okay, I thought you would go this way, but it's okay. Two things. I think there is an intergenerational war from where I sit. I think that young people are fighting higher powers. I can give 2 examples. Number one is when this guy called Duale in 2016 went and passed the University Amendment Bill that curtails students from being elected democratically or by popular vote. And that has gone a long way into muzzling the voice of students in Kenya. And Kariuki, you can bear witness to me, and to Rotich as well, that the past has had very credible and very vocal student leaders. But now what we are seeing with that bill is muzzling the voice of students. They cannot even speak about the draconian education financing model that is coming up. Students are not able to speak about the social issues of this country, the economic issues of this country, the political issues of this country. Students have been, for the past, for generations that have come and gone, been the ones spearheading revolutions across the world. But our students in Kenya are slowly dying because of a university amendment bill that was made by a guy who doesn't understand what students' plights are. I mean, in an aim to curtail and in an aim to bring down the voices of students, they went and passed a bill that now does not allow students to even express themselves as much as they would. And we've seen a lot of leaders coming out of student leadership. I am one of them, and I am a proud former student leader of the University of Nairobi. That has put me in platforms that I'm wondering what will my predecessors be able to do. Because that environment allows you as a young man, as a young woman, to get into the political space. We've seen Gladys Wanga coming from, being birthed from student leadership. We've seen the likes of Isaac Mwaura being birthed from student leadership, the Cabinet Secretary for Youth, Babu Namwamba, even the Deputy President, Rigathi, was also a student leader of Nyeri District Students Association. Those are movements that were credible and were supporting young people to get into leadership spaces. But what are we seeing with the older generation? Putting obstacles every now and then. Usiku na mchana wanaeka obstacles for young people like us not to be able to thrive. Secondly, the National Youth Council. When you look at the National Youth Council of 2009, and here I'll ask for your help, Mheshimiwa Umi. 2009, it was passed and it was enacted, and there were laws and regulations that were supposed to guide it. But now, because of the Constitution 2010, a lot of revisions have to be made to the National Youth Council so that young people in Kenya can elect their members of the council.
I think
up to today,
should have youth. Let's start there. That's
the council.
It embodies the name, but has no membership in terms of its composition.
It does not have the council. So
youth gap. People are youth for 10 years.
Okay.
Because this is a very simple, it's a very simple legislative issue, because the National Youth Council needs to conduct elections. These elections have to be approved and passed by Parliament. And even before those elections are conducted, Parliament needs to pass the revised bill for the National Youth Council to allow the new structure of Kenya to incorporate the county governments, the wards and the constituencies. Before that, it provided for provinces and all that, which was what we had earlier. But now today, Parliament is comfortably sitting on that bill, saying that, I mean, we cannot pass a bill for young people because they'll compete with us when we go to the ground. So they fear us. So this intergenerational war must stop. Okay. And one of the provisions, or one of the suggestions that were made even in the Building Bridges initiative, was to have a national commission for the youth, which is, I think, is something would be very comprehensive in addressing. There's so many issues we've been talking about here, from drug abuse to leadership to teenage pregnancies. I mean, these are things that we can deal with them in a very compact manner. And until this country takes its youth seriously, we are not going anywhere.
Yes,
the issue here,
I'll come to you briefly. Let me take a second.
Okay, thank you. I think talking on the same issue and talking about, let me talk about the space of the youth. And you look that there's a lot of confusion because of even the changing time and changing innovation. It's not that we are talking of something called the orange economy, which no longer used to be there, which is things like, from the social media, the new, the digital space, the new scope of making money. But you see, this has also become a problem to the young people, because you find us, as she said, the generational gap. Even the government itself does not understand the space. That's why we also have a lot of harassment. And you see that we have a lot of arrests, we have a lot of harassment by the young people, because you've even seen in memes that people saying, we are doing this business, but the fear is the DCI. And we've seen extrajudicial, even killing and abductions, because some people, they are told, they are doing scams, they are doing all this, because these are spaces which were no longer there during their time, and they have not been able to understand the space. Of course, I know there are unethical practices there, but if they are able to understand the scope and support them, there will be some sanitization and ethical practices. Even in business, there's something which we call even ethical hacking. Okay. When you talk about ethical hacking, it means that there is an ethical hacking. If there is support, proper training, proper mentorship, that person who is unethical will be able to get a platform, a legal platform whereby they can be able to make money from that. So that means the harassment that we are talking about, the unemployment thing will be able to be solved. And that's why even the Ajira program, which was brought some time back to support such, it's not working. So I think there needs to be a holistic approach from the government, the legislature, and also the private sector.
Okay, let's now take a look at the feedback here. On the broadcast, the hashtag on X is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdulkadir. Here's what we are saying on X, formerly Twitter. This is from Yene Lazaro. He says, young people were deceived to believe that the Hasla government will be sensitive to their plight. It's now business as usual with the status quo. In fact, this regime only sensitive on European policies, he meant. We are slowly becoming an American puppet.
Maybe update.
So Nixon Dugure says, if women spend much more time on unpaid care than men and end up living longer than men, then it's time to either reverse the roles or share the roles equally. Remy Bute says, we cannot improve what we do not measure. 135 countries do not have time use data. SDG, that is the 5 target, 5.4 calls for recognizing, reducing and redistributing unpaid care work as a condition for achieving gender equality. Brian Chemo says societal norms and expectations related to gender roles have evolved, but inequalities persist, which creates a sense of insecurity among youths, particularly when they perceive inequities in opportunities, education, employment based on their gender. Ole Shonko says it's clear there is no deliberate plan to reduce the cost of living soon. The president has talked before about reducing the number of trips, but seems he proposes that while on his way out of the country. Okelo Mwalimu says it has reached a point where thousands of youths graduating from colleges and universities must start valuing skills attained from such institutions more than prestige derived from graduations. This would enable them to migrate from perennial job seeking to job creation. That's what you're saying here on the broadcast, and we are out of time. Well, thank you for your presence here. Jan Kariuki is the chair of the Ethical Leadership Network Committee. on governance. Thanks for your time. Kamau Ambio is the Kiambu County Youth Caucus. Your time is appreciated. Kaberia Barrio is an entrepreneur. Thank you for your time. Angel Mbudia is the Chair, Jubilee Party Youth. Thank you for your time as well. And David Rotich, the President of the Moot Mount Kenya University, and to Honorable Umul Khair Harun, who is a nominated Member of Parliament by ODM Party. Thanks for your time as well here on the broadcast and waking up with us week-long from Monday to Friday. Your time is all appreciated. The hashtag on X has been Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Have yourselves a lovely weekend, and we'll see you here next week on the broadcast at the same time. Good morning.